Hello everybody, and welcome to another tutorial regarding Webmin. Today I'm gonna show you how to make all the necessary backups for your server using Webmin. And to do it, we're just gonna do it like in parts, because in the first part I'm gonna show you how to make a backup locally using the local option. But the local option is going to be configured by me by adding another storage unit or a disk. That there's going to be this is my primary disk. I'm going to add another disk that is going to be dedicated only for my backups, and we're going to configure in Webmin that those backups are going to appear only on this disk as an additional disk. So you can use in your server whichever disk you want and use this option as well. Okay, so let's start. Let's just create a disk. I'm gonna just call it Debian Backups. Alright, let's start the server. Of course, after adding this disk, I need to make a new partition. Okay, so first let's start with for partitioning and making the mount point and everything. I'm going to use a disk. So we're going to have a small tutorial as well on a disk here, just like an addition. So as you can see, now I have my main partition here. So here 25 gigs, and this is the additional disk 8 gigs that is going to be used for storing my backups. So okay, let's start with choosing this 8 gigs disk, 8 gigabyte disk. Alright, first we're gonna pick N, then we're gonna pick P for primary partition. Number 1, first sector is gonna be, of course, this. Last sector is gonna be 2 and 5. Okay, now we can do P to check. As you can see, our device now has a mounting point of dev SDB1 and it's set up. At the end, let's do W to synchronize the disks. Okay, and now we're gonna do ext4 -b SDB1. So we created a file system now on our additional disk. So now let's go to now etc fstab, because we're gonna mount. As you can see, I have this already prepared here. The thing is, we just need to change this to 4, make a little adjustments here, because mounting point is going to be here, and then type is going to be here, options, defaults, and dump and pass. It's gonna be here. Okay, so for mounting point, of course, you can use whichever name you want. I'm gonna use backups. So basically this is the path of the mount and this is the mounting point where it's gonna be mounted on the server. Right, so let's just save it and reboot. If everything went well, you shouldn't have any errors at the beginning. If you made an error during this configuration of fstab, while the automatic mount is gonna start, then you would have like errors right now. So then you would have to log in with your root password and fix your fstab. Usually it's just about things not being in the right place. Right, so now let's check. Right, so after this we need to, of course, make the directory. So -p / backups. Okay, I'm just gonna jump to fstab. Yeah, it's backups, good. Now let's jump to backups. Everything's fine. So now let's check if we have everything mounted. And yeah, you can see that we have like dev/sdb1 mounted to our backups. So, and if we jump to backups and do ls, we have like confirmation. Alright, so that everything is mounted like it should. Now let's pull up our webmin, or in this case my webmin. So I'm gonna log in. Okay, let's check PA. Sorry about that. In just a second, and we are in the webmin. Okay, so I'm just gonna try to stretch it. I wanted to stretch it a little bit. Okay, so you can see how it looks. So basically what we need to do now, we need to go to our backup configuration files. So we're gonna use this to backup our configuration. So as you can see, we have backup destination and we have a local file. We have FTP server, which we're gonna set up later on, and we have SSH server, and as well we can download in the browser and the configuration file. So if you're using let's say Windows and you're logging into Chrome or Firefox to your webmin, you can always, of course, download the configuration using this button through your browser. I will show you. Just let's pick everything, Ctrl A, let's backup, backups being prepared. You can see it's called backup TGZ, and there you go. I've downloaded the backup to my download folder. So that's one way to do it. But of course we don't want to do it this way. We want to schedule the backups for like a remote location. So we pick the local file because that's where we actually made the additional disk. One more thing that is left, it's always good to do a chmod. And I'm gonna change the ownership as well. Okay, just to be sure that the permissions to the folder are set like they should be, because otherwise you won't be able to send the files to the folder. Alright, so let's pick our... So basically how the path should look like. First goes the name of the folder, and then the name of the file. So mine is gonna be backup. I'm just gonna change the date. And dot, of course, tgz, because it's an archive file. Okay, so we have this setup. We're gonna, again, Control A, pick the whole configuration backup with everything, all the modules. We are backing up everything, of course the configuration file, yeah. And let's go for backup now. So the backup is being processed. And as you can see, the backup has started and it was sent, completed, with this size. The archives contains this many files. So now if we go to our tools, file manager, and we go to our backups folder, you can see that your backup is right here. So everything worked like it should. So that's one way to do the backups if you have an additional external drive. This probably would also work for drives that are connected through the web. So if you have some kind of Synology drive or whatever else that is similar to Synology, then you can of course try to do it as well. But then you would probably need to maybe pick the last option in the backup, that is SSH, because probably you need to provide the login username and password to your external server. So probably this, because here you don't need any username or password. You just pick the location and do the backup. So of course you can also schedule your backups, which I'm gonna show you later on. Okay, but first we got this option covered, so now it's time for FTP server, right? So we need to configure an FTP server for our Debian. So let's go for it. Some people have problems with configuration of an FTP server, so this short tutorial is gonna be also for those people who have some kind of problems and are struggling with this functionality. So I'm gonna try to help you out with this. Alright, so let's close this for a moment. Let's pull up the second server, because I have a second server prepared that is gonna be only for the installation of FTP. So on the second server I'm gonna install FTP, and that's the server that we are gonna connect. So on my main server, the configuration is gonna go to the other server that has an FTP installed. Of course you can do it differently as you want. You can just even install an FTP server on your, I don't know, desktop computer if you want to pull all the configuration files through to your computer. Even if you have a Windows, you can just install FileZilla and prepare everything like FileZilla server, and then you can just pull all the backups there, depending on what kind of distribution you have. If you work only on Linux distributions, then you of course have to install the server on some of the Linux distributions, and you can always mangle and tangle with it like this. But if you have like switched possibilities, you're also using Windows, then you can also do it like that. Alright, enough of this babbling of mine. Let's go to it. So first of all, what we need to do is of course do apt. Maybe let's check if everything is fine. So yeah, things are going good, so fine. So let's start with apt update. Oh, sorry. Okay, now upgrade. As you can see, I have some upgrades. I'm just gonna put them. Okay. Now let's install apt install GNU PG2, because that's gonna be needed. As you can see, I already have this installed, the newest version. So now let's do apt install. So by default, we're gonna use VS FTP D. This is a VFS TPD. This is a FTP server that you can install on Debian 11 Bullseye. So by default, this server is available in the repository of Debian, and to install it you just need to run this command. So don't need to add any additional repositories. Should be called by Debian by default. Okay, so let's install it. Once this is done, we need to enable VS FTPD to start automatically upon system boot. So let's start the web server. Sudo, sorry about that. Systemctl start VS FTPD. Now let's enable. The service, and let's check the status. Everything is active and running. Alright. Okay, so now we need to create an FTP user for the VSFTP user list file. So add user Debian yes. Alright, we have that covered. Now we need to add this user to the VSFTPD user list. So we're gonna do echo pipe t-a dc. User list. Our user has been added. After that we need to create an FTP directory, of course. So make directory for the user that was just created. FTP directory. Okay. And the last thing, so basically we just done a chown and chmod, so setting all the permissions that are required for the folder. Now after creating the folder, we need to create the folder file and give it specific ownerships for our user that we created. So I'm gonna just clear this. Now let's do make directory again. Alright, now let's create the folder FTP files. Okay, now chown, of course setting everything for Debian, not home, Debian, FTP files, and the last thing, let's go to this directory and to chmod minus set the permission for the folder. Alright. Now we need to configure our FTP server. So we need to open the config file, which is located in etc. Alright. So basically what do we need to set here in this config? So listen, this should be on no, IPv6 this should be on yes, anonymous enable this should be on no, write enable should be on yes, so we have to take this on. Next, local umask, this should be on as well. Dear message enable, this should be on yes, it's fine. Use local time, this should be on yes as well. xferlog enable, this should be on yes. Connect from port 20, this should be on yes, this is important. Chroot local user, this should be on yes. Alright, and last one, secure chroot directory, we need to check this one. Secure chroot directory, it should be var run with ftpd/empty. Everything is fine. Oracle pump service VSFTPD. That's okay. We're not gonna touch any RSA certs right now because we're gonna do it later on. And at the end of this configuration, we need to add also user underscore sub underscore token equals $sign user local root. You can just write it down after me. Alright, so that's basically it. What you needed to add. Now let's save everything. And let's restart. And now let's check status. Okay, so everything went well. The configuration has been saved properly. If you, after running status, will run into unactive or error, that means that you misspelled something in the config. So just go through it again, check if all the spellings are right. Right, so we have this done. Now we need to, of course, try to secure our FTP server with SSL, since we don't have any certificates prepared. We need to make them ourselves. So to provide a secure FTP connection to the server, we'll need to encrypt the server with the SSL certificate. So let's make one. First, let's prepare a directory for the certificates. And now let's make the certificates. So here in common name you need to add the name of your server. So mine is debserv, as you can see. So that's the name I'm gonna use here. Email address, that can be a dummy address. Okay, so our certificates are ready. Now we need to again make some changes in the config file. So let's open again our configuration file at the FTP vsftp.com, and here we need to go to our RSA certificates. So we got them here. As you can see, we have some snake oil pen, so some bogus certificates that are nothing basically. So first we need to actually change this, of course. And the same goes to here, changing the path to the certificate. And of course changing this to yes. And at the end we need to again add some other things regarding SSL connection. So you can just type along with me. Alright, so that's basically it. Now let's again save the changes. Let's restart everything and let's check the status. Everything's fine. Yeah, everything's fine. So basically that's the end of our configuration of the FTP server. Your FTP server is ready and running here. It's ready to receive your backups if you want to set them up in your Webmin. Next step, I'm gonna of course go to the Webmin of my original server and try to back everything up to this one for this FTP server. Well, if you have UFW, which I don't, yeah, I don't have UFW, but if you have UFW, you need to add 2 rules just to allow TCP connection for port 21 and 22. So basically what you need to add is something like this: UFW allow 21 port 21 on TCP, and then port 22 on TCP. And of course you need to reload your firewall. If you're using IP tables, you have to do the same thing. Okay, so let's close this down because we're not going to use it for now. Everything is done here. Now let's actually go to the original server. Okay, again we go to Webmin, backup configuration files. I'm gonna use SSH. I'm gonna just SSH to the server, and I'm gonna send all my backed up data through SSH. So I'm gonna use Ctrl A. Here, of course, I need to put the server IP address. So this is the IP address I need to put in the actual folder with the name file. So it's gonna be, as you can see, home Debian FTP directory FTP files and backup, let's say backup 2, and .tgz. Don't forget about this because it has to be an archive. So, right, now we have to specify what kind of user. Well, the same user that was configured when we were configuring the FTP server. So for me it's this one, for you it's gonna be whichever you picked. Password for this user, and of course let's use the port 22 for the backup. We picked every module to backup, configuration files, and let's now backup button. So as you can see, everything went well. The backup has been done through the SSH. Has this many files. Okay, so to confirm this, let's just go to Webmin server index. This is my server, the other one. I will just need to change the default port. I will try to open it from here. Alright, so we're in the other server. Let's refresh the modules. Okay, now let's go to Tools, File Manager. Let's go to Home, Debian, FTP directory, and of course FTP files. And there is our backup. So everything worked as it should. The FTP server is running and it's receiving all the stuff that we set up. Right, so let's go back to my main server. If you watched my cluster video about clustering servers, I didn't manage to actually find and add the second server. As you can see, now everything is fine. I think I just had a problem with my port on the second server. So this is basically how it looks when you find a server in the net that you want to add to your cluster. So you can have like 5, 10, whichever, how many servers you have here. And from here you can see I added it to the cluster here, and I can of course go to users and groups and add the server here as well. And there it is. I can just click on it and I can manage everything, all the users, all the groups on the server. If you want more info, just go to server clustering video on my channel about it. So Well, just different thing. I just wanted to go back to it for a second. Okay, let's go back to our backups. So that's how the backup looks. If you use SSH, if you use the local file, if you use FTP, it looks the same as the SSH. You just put all the same stuff. You just need to put here 21 instead of 22 because the default port for FTP is 21, not 22. So that's the difference. So you have like 4 different options. This one, this one, this one, and the last one downloaded in the browser, which I also showed you. So this is the first one, backing up. You can of course schedule backups. You can add a new scheduled backup plan. Of course here you again pick where do you want those backups to go. So if I picked the SSH server, for example, now let's see what we have here. We can also do a pre and post backup comments if we want to. So after the backup is done, something will also run in the background, or before the backup is done, something is going to be run in the background. So all depends what you want to do before the scheduled backup begins or ends. And now backup schedule, of course. So if you want to have any kind of results, during your backups sent to you via email, you can of course type the email address here. When to send the email? Only when an error occurs, so you can be notified if something went bad with your backup schedule, or you can always receive emails after the backup is done. Scheduled backup enabled. Yes, at the times selected below. So basically you pick when the backups are gonna be done. Simple schedule, so it's either hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly when system boots. So you can choose whenever you want the backup to be done. Let's say 7, because these are minutes, so maybe 0 hours at 8. What kind of day? The first day of the month. Months, select all the months. So weeks, select all days of the week. Right? So basically when I create this, no modules selected. Okay, so I forgot about that. Need to of course select all the modules, Control A. Now create the backup. And let's see, and this is how my backup schedule looks like. So 17 modules scheduled to backup via SSH to a FTP directory every first day of the month at 8 o'clock. So that's just like, it's very simple to make your own backup rules here, or sorry, schedule your own backup. So very basic, very simple stuff. Restore. Well, restore is even easier, because what you need to do is basically, if you've done the complete backup of all the modules that you have here, you need to again do Control A, pick all the modules, because you cannot restore only one thing, you need to restore the whole stuff if you've done the whole stuff. Then you need to of course pick the location that it was stored, where it was stored. So basically the same as backup now tab. You just pick whichever option you picked when backing up or making the scheduled backups. Apply the configuration, of course, because after a restore you want the old configuration to be applied. Just show what will be restored. Nah, that's not needed. After picking everything here, you just press restore now, and if something bad happened to you, your backup is restored. Okay, so basically I think I've covered everything regarding backups. So I think we are done with all of this, all of those tabs, because I talked about all of them in my previous videos as well. The next tab we are gonna talk about is the system tab. Well, I didn't talk about Webmin configuration tab that much, so maybe I will do a next video about this, because there's a little bit stuff to cover here. And once this is done, we're gonna move to the system tab. Okay, so thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful. I showed you the easiest way to set up your own FTP server on your Debian server or whichever distribution you're running. So yeah, that's all for me. I will see you soon in a next video. If you like the videos, please support me. It will help me to develop this channel and help me make more tutorials and more videos for everybody to gain knowledge. So yeah, if you like the content, you can consider helping me out with my Patreon